The call came at 6:15 a.m. on a Tuesday, jarring me awake from a dream I can't remember. My husband's name flashed on the screen, which was strange since he'd left for his morning run just 20 minutes ago. "Harper, we need to talk about the study," Ethan said, his voice oddly formal. "Chloe needs a proper space to work, and your study is the only suitable room in the house." I sat up in bed, my mind still foggy.
What?
"I've been thinking about this for a while. Chloe's trying to finish her degree, and the guest room is too small for a proper desk setup. My name is Harper, and until this morning, I thought I had a handle on my life. I'm a high school English teacher, married to Ethan for 12 years. And we'd recently taken in his niece Chloe after she dropped out of college, temporarily, or so we thought. Ethan, that's my workspace. I grade papers there, plan lessons. You can use the dining room," he cut in. "Or we could set something up in our bedroom." I pressed my fingers against my temple, feeling a headache building. Through the window, I watched the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and orange, a beautiful morning that suddenly felt wrong. "We're not having this conversation over the phone," I said. "Especially not at 6 in the morning. Chloe's already measured the space. She has some great ideas for." "She what?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "When did this happen?" "Yesterday, while you were at the department meeting." There was a pause, followed by the sound of cars passing on his end. "Look, I know this is sudden, but she's family, Harper. She needs our support right now." I hung up without responding, something I'd never done before in our marriage. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down. In the guest room down the hall, I could hear Chloe moving around, probably already awake and planning her takeover of my space. The study was more than just a room to me. It was my sanctuary, filled with books I'd collected over the years, my grandmother's old writing desk, and the view of our backyard garden that inspired my best lesson plans. And now, apparently, it was being redistributed without my consent. I got out of bed and walked to my study door, running my hand along the worn wooden frame. Something about this felt wrong, not just the request itself, but the way it was delivered. Ethan had always been considerate, almost to a fault. This wasn't like him at all. As I stood there, I heard Chloe's door open and close, followed by her light footsteps in the hallway. She paused briefly near my study, and I could have sworn I heard her whisper something before continuing downstairs. This wasn't just about a room. I could feel it in my gut. This was the beginning of something else entirely. I spent the morning in a daze, mechanically going through my routine while waiting for Ethan to return. When he finally walked through the door at 7:30, sweaty from his run, I was sitting at the kitchen counter with 2 untouched cups of coffee. "I thought we could talk now," I said, pushing 1 cup toward him. He grabbed a water bottle instead. "Look, I know the timing wasn't great, but..." "Timing?" I let out a hollow laugh. "Ethan, you and Chloe went into my study while I was at work and measured it for her furniture. When exactly were you planning to tell me?" "We were going to surprise you with a complete plan." Chloe's voice came from behind me. She was standing in the doorway, already dressed for the day in what looked like new designer clothes. "I found this amazing desk that would look perfect in there." My jaw clenched. "This isn't about furniture, Chloe. That room is my workspace." "But you have the whole school to work in," she said, her voice taking on that sweet, reasonable tone that always seemed to work on Ethan. "I'm trying to finish my degree online, and I need a proper study space. The guest room is too small," Ethan cut in. "Harper, she's trying to get her life back on track. Isn't that what you wanted?" The way they stood there, united against me in my own kitchen, made something snap inside. What I wanted was to be consulted about changes in my own home. What I wanted was for my husband to respect my space enough to have a conversation with me first. Chloe's eyes welled up with tears. "I knew you didn't really want me here. After everything that happened with Mom and Dad." "Don't," I said sharply. "Don't make this about your parents." Ethan moved to put an arm around his niece. "Harper, that's enough. She's family. And what am I?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. Ethan looked away, and in that moment, I saw something in his expression that I'd never noticed before. A flicker of guilt, maybe, or something deeper. I have to get ready for work, I said, standing up. But this conversation isn't over. As I headed upstairs, I heard Chloe's voice softer now. Uncle Ethan, maybe we should look at other options. No, he replied, just loud enough for me to hear. We'll figure something out. I promised, remember? I paused on the stairs, that last exchange niggling at something in my mind. There was more going on here than a simple room reassignment. The question was, what exactly had Ethan promised, and to whom? In my study, I noticed something else. My grandmother's antique paperweight was slightly out of place, and there was a faint scratch on the desk surface that hadn't been there before. Small things, easily explained away, but they felt like warnings of what was to come. I wasn't looking for anything when I went into Ethan's home office that evening. I just needed a USB drive for my lesson plans, and he always kept extras in his desk drawer. That's when I saw it, a letter peeking out from beneath his keyboard, handwritten on pale blue stationery. My hands trembled as I read the first line. Ethan, I can't stop thinking about our conversation at the cafe. The signature at the bottom belonged to Claire Matthews, Chloe's aunt from her mother's side. The letter was dated 3 weeks ago, right around when Chloe moved in with us. What are you doing? I jumped, the letter falling from my hands. Chloe stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. I needed a USB drive, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She walked into the room, her eyes fixed on the fallen letter. That's private correspondence. Private correspondence about what exactly? Chloe's face shifted, that familiar manipulative sweetness returning. Uncle Ethan's just helping Aunt Claire sort out some family matters. You know, about my trust fund and stuff. But something in her tone was off. I'd been teaching teenagers long enough to recognize when someone was constructing a lie on the spot. Funny, I said, picking up the letter. There's no mention of a trust fund here. Just a lot of talk about feelings and secret meetings. Chloe's smile faltered. You're reading too much into things. Like you always do. Am I? Like how I was reading too much into you going through my study without my permission. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. You know, Aunt Claire always said you were threatened by other women in Ethan's life. I didn't believe her at first, but now. The front door opened downstairs, and Ethan's voice called out. Anyone home? Up here, Chloe answered, her entire demeanor changing instantly. Harper was just snooping through your things. I heard Ethan's footsteps on the stairs, but I couldn't take my eyes off Chloe. In that moment, I saw something I'd missed before. Not just manipulation, but a calculated cruelty in her expression. Harper. Ethan appeared in the doorway, looking between us. What's going on? I held up the letter. Maybe you should tell me. Who's been meeting Claire Matthews at cafes, and why is she writing you love letters? His face went pale, but it was Chloe who spoke first. Oh, Uncle Ethan. I tried to stop her from reading it. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Chloe's sudden arrival, the push for my study, and now this letter. I'd been watching the wrong person all along. I think, I said slowly, it's time we all had a real conversation about what's actually going on here. I need your help finding something. I told Mia over lunch at our usual cafe, sliding Claire's letter across the table. And I need you to not tell me I'm crazy. My best friend read the letter, her lawyer's poker face slipping slightly. When did you find this? 2 days ago. Ethan claims it's about family business, but I pushed my untouched salad around the plate. I hired someone, a private investigator named Sam Reed. Mia's eyebrows shot up. That's a big step, Harper. I know. He's meeting us here in 10 minutes. Right on cue, a man in his mid-40s approached our table, dressed in a way that screamed, trying not to look like a private investigator. He sat down without waiting for an invitation. Mrs. Collins, Sam said, pulling out his phone. I have some preliminary findings you should see. He showed us photos, Ethan and Claire at various cafes, looking intimate. But it was the last photo that made my stomach turn. Chloe was there too, sitting between them, all three laughing like a happy family. The meeting started 6 months ago, Sam explained. Before your niece moved in. She's not my niece, I said automatically. She's Ethan's. That's the interesting part, Sam continued. I did some digging into Chloe's background. Her mother's death certificate lists Claire Matthews as next of kin, not Ethan. There's no legal requirement for him to be her guardian. Mia leaned forward. So why is she really there? There's more, Sam said, swiping to another photo. This one showed Chloe leaving a lawyer's office with Claire and Ethan. This was taken last week. They've been meeting with an estate attorney. My hands started shaking. What kind of estate attorney? The kind that handles divorce settlements. The cafe suddenly felt too small, too warm. A memory surfaced, Chloe's voice from the hallway that first morning. Everything's going according to plan. Harper, Mia said softly. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Had to move some of your stuff from the study. Chloe needed the space today. Hope that's okay. I stood up, so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. I have to go home.
Now.
I'll drive, Mia said, already grabbing her keys. Sam caught my arm as I turned to leave. Mrs. Collins, there's one more thing you should know. Claire Matthews? She's been making regular withdrawals from a joint account with Ethan. Large ones. The pieces clicked into place. The mysterious phone calls, Chloe's expensive new clothes, Ethan's sudden insistence on giving away my space. They weren't just planning to push me out of my study. They were planning to push me out of my life. Mia dropped me off at home, but I froze at my own front door. Through the window, I could see boxes stacked in the living room, boxes filled with my books from the study. My hand trembled as I turned the key. Inside, the destruction was worse than I'd imagined. My grandmother's antique desk had been pushed into a corner, its surface scratched and marred. My carefully organized filing system lay scattered across the floor. And there, in the center of it all, stood Chloe, hanging a large abstract painting where my degrees once hung. Oh, she said, turning around. We didn't expect you home so early. Uncle Ethan had to run some errands with Aunt Claire. She smiled, that same sweet, poisonous smile. We're making good progress, though. Don't you think it looks better already? I walked to my grandmother's desk, running my fingers along the fresh scratches. This was an heirloom. Accidents happen during moves, she shrugged. Besides, it's so old-fashioned. My new desk will be here tomorrow. Something inside me snapped. I grabbed the painting off the wall, letting it crash to the floor. Get out. Excuse me? I said get out. My voice was eerily calm. I know about the lawyer. The joint account. All of it. Chloe's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculated underneath. You don't know anything. I know you're not here because you need a guardian. I know about the meetings with Claire. The question is, what would Ethan say if he knew I had proof? She stepped closer, dropping all pretense of sweetness. He wouldn't believe you. He never has before, has he? Poor, paranoid Harper. Always feeling threatened by his family. My phone buzzed, another text from Ethan. Chloe says you're upset about the desk. We can get it fixed. As I read the message, Chloe pulled something from her pocket, a small, worn photo. It showed her as a child, standing between Ethan and Claire. We were always meant to be a family, she said softly. You were just temporary. I looked up from the photo to see her holding my grandmother's paperweight, the heavy crystal one I'd inherited along with the desk. Before I could move, she let it slip from her fingers. It shattered on the hardwood floor, fragments scattering like ice. Oops, she whispered. Another accident. I heard Ethan's key in the lock, but I couldn't take my eyes off the broken pieces of my grandmother's last gift. In that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about saving my marriage anymore. This was about survival. I laid out the evidence on our kitchen table like playing cards in a losing hand. The photos, bank statements, lawyer's business card. And that damning letter from Claire. Ethan stood at the counter, his back to me, while Chloe perched on the stairs, watching. How long? I asked. Harper, it's not what you think.
How long?
He turned, and for the first time, I saw guilt written plainly across his face. Claire and I reconnected at her sister's funeral. Chloe needed family, and we Became one. I picked up the childhood photo Chloe had shown me. While I was working 60-hour weeks to support us, you were building a secret life with them? It wasn't secret, Chloe cut in. You just never paid attention. Too busy with your precious career. Chloe, please, Ethan said, but his tone was gentle, protective.
The way he used to speak to me.
I pulled out the final piece of evidence, papers from Sam's showing joint property viewings. You're buying a house together. In Portland. Ethan's face went white. Who told you? Does it matter? Were you going to wait until after you'd moved all my things out of the study? Or maybe after the divorce papers were signed? I was going to tell you, he whispered. I just couldn't find the right way. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, bitter and sharp.
Right.
Because there's a right way to tell your wife you're leaving her for your dead sister-in-law's sister? Don't you dare judge him, Chloe snapped, standing. Aunt Claire makes him happy. She understands him. When's the last time you even tried? I looked at my husband, really looked at him. The man I'd supported through failed business ventures, creative blocks, and depression. The man I'd loved enough to put my own dreams on hold for. Now he couldn't even meet my eyes. You know what's funny? I said, gathering the evidence back into my folder. I kept thinking this was about the study.
About space.
But it was never about that, was it? You needed somewhere to put me until you figured out how to get rid of me completely. Harper. Ethan reached for me, but I stepped back. I filed for divorce this morning, I said. Mia helped me with the paperwork. You'll be served tomorrow. As I walked toward the door, Chloe called out, You're making a mistake. We're his real family. I turned back one last time, not to her, but to Ethan. You know what the worst part is? I would have given you anything. All you had to do was ask. The door closed behind me with a quiet click, nothing like the dramatic slam I'd imagined. In the driveway, my packed car waited, another thing Ethan hadn't noticed. I'd lost my study, my marriage, and my home. But watching them through the window, already turning to comfort each other, I realized something else. I'd lost myself somewhere along the way too. 3 days after I left, I returned to the house to collect the last of my things. I timed it carefully. Ethan would be at a client meeting, and Chloe had a therapy appointment. Or so I thought. I found her in my study, sitting at my grandmother's desk, reading a worn envelope. You're not supposed to be here, I said. She didn't look up. Did you know about this letter? What letter? The one my mom wrote before she died. Her voice cracked. The one where she made Uncle Ethan promise to take care of me. I moved closer, seeing tears on her cheeks. Real ones, not the manipulative drops she'd perfected over the past months. She knew she was dying, Chloe continued. She made him swear to give me the family she couldn't. That's why Aunt Claire. She trailed off, finally meeting my eyes. We didn't mean for it to happen like this. But it did happen, I said, my voice steady. You destroyed my marriage. We were trying to make things right. She stood up suddenly. Mom wanted me to have a real family. Aunt Claire loved Uncle Ethan first, before you ever came along. We were just fixing a mistake. A mistake. I picked up a shard of my grandmother's paperweight from where it still lay on the floor. Is that what I am?
You don't understand.
When you have nothing, no parents, no real home, you'll do anything to belong somewhere. You're right, I said. I don't understand destroying someone else's life to build your own. She thrust the letter at me. Read it. Then tell me you wouldn't have done the same. I took the letter but didn't open it. Instead, I placed it and the crystal shard on the desk.
Keep it.
Keep all of it. The study, the house, Ethan. You wanted a family so badly you were willing to steal one. Now you have to live with that. Harper, wait. But remember something? I continued, turning back at the door. A family built on lies and manipulation isn't real. It's just another kind of emptiness. As I walked away, I heard her crying. Not the practiced sobs from before, but raw, broken sounds. Part of me wanted to go back, to offer comfort or understanding. But that wasn't my role anymore. In my car, I found a text from Mia. Apartment keys ready. Time to start fresh. I looked back at the house one last time. Through the study window, I could see Chloe clutching her mother's letter, surrounded by the wreckage of two families, the one she'd lost and the one she'd destroyed trying to replace it. Sometimes revenge isn't about getting even. Sometimes it's about walking away and letting karma do its work. 6 months later, I was grading papers in my new apartment when someone knocked on my door. I opened it to find Chloe standing there, looking smaller somehow, less certain. "Your grandmother's desk," she said without preamble. I had it restored. I noticed the shadows under her eyes, the way she clutched her purse strap like a lifeline. "Why?" "Because I broke something that mattered to you." She pulled out her phone, showing me pictures of the restored desk. The craftsman said the scratches tell a story now, about damage and repair. I studied the images. The desk looked beautiful. The scratches transformed into subtle patterns in the wood grain. "Where is it?" "Still at the house. Ethan and Claire moved to Portland last week."
She paused.
I didn't go with them. That surprised me. I thought that was the plan. The perfect family? Turns out perfect families don't exist. She met my eyes. "I'm starting therapy. Real therapy. Not just the sessions Uncle Ethan arranged to convince you I was getting help." I leaned against the doorframe, remembering that broken girl crying in my study. "What do you want, Chloe?" "Nothing. I just..." She took a deep breath. "I wanted you to know that sometimes the thing you think will fix everything just breaks more things instead." My phone buzzed, a text from my new boyfriend, asking about dinner plans. A simple, drama-free message that made me smile. "The desk is yours," Chloe said, turning to leave. "If you want it." "Keep it," I replied. "Use it to write your own story." She nodded, understanding the weight of what I was offering, not forgiveness exactly, but something like peace. Later that evening, I sat in my new study, surrounded by fresh plants and artwork I'd chosen myself. On my desk, a modern one I'd bought with my first post-divorce paycheck, sat a small crystal paperweight. Not my grandmother's, but one I'd found at an antique store. It caught the light differently, creating new patterns on my papers. Mia called while I was finishing my grading. Heard Chloe stopped by. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, surprised to find it was true. "You know what's funny? I spent so much time thinking about revenge, about making them hurt like I hurt. But in the end, what?" I watched the sunset through my window, thinking about damaged desks and broken families and the strange ways life writes its own story. In the end, the best revenge was learning to live without needing it. "That's very zen of you," Mia laughed. "No," I said, touching the new paperweight. "That's just growth." Through my window, I could see the city lights coming on, each one a story I didn't need to know. My story was here, in this room I'd built for myself, where the only promises that mattered were the ones I made to me.